Well, Logan O'Hoppe is bringing us some O'Hoppe. He looked great in his debut last night. We're going to talk all about that. And who should be on the major league roster from the minor league roster next season? John and I are going to play a game called Up or Down. And who's the breakout player on the Angels this season? John and I will share two players that we believe have busted out. Let's go. You're locked on with Mike and Jon, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. We're free and we're available wherever you get your podcasts. And you can give us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps people to find the show. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can like, you can subscribe, and you can click the bell to be notified every time a new episode drops.
What's going on? Thank you for joining us for this edition of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is Jon, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother Jon.
We've been fans of the Halos for a very long time, and we've battled the A's for a very long time, and it's always been back and forth with them. In fact, there are years where we are good and they're down, and they're good and we're down, and last year was certainly a year where they were very good and we were very down. So, Mike, it felt good to get that 4-1 win over the A's on Wednesday night, thanks in part to some great pitching and, of course, some timely hitting from Mike Trout and Taylor Ward. And we cannot gloss over the debut of Logan O'Hoppe behind the dish, taking his place as catcher. The Angels' top prospect made his debut, Michael, and it went great.
It really went great. And can I just make a couple of observations? First of all, did he not look like Derek Jeter?
He had a funky stance up there.
His batting stance looks like Derek Jeter, which is so funny because here's what happens. So younger baseball fans, here's what happens, and it's really weird as you get older. When you're young, you're watching players, and you're like, oh, these guys are great. And then when they start to retire and then other guys come into the major leagues and go, oh, that guy was my hero, it makes you feel like you've been living for centuries, because when people say, oh man, Tim Salmon was my hero, I watched him growing up, I'm like, yeah, so did I. But then when people say Mike Trout's my hero, I watched him growing up, I'm like, Mike Trout's a kid, right? And so O'Hoppe looked like Derek Jeter. He's a hero of his, and he looked like the captain behind the plate too, Johnny. It was great to see him handle Michael Lorenzen so well. And I was impressed with his first at bat. He swung at the first two pitches, and you could tell he was just amped. And then his family's behind him, and you could tell they're all stoked and excited. And then he watched two balls, and he watched them really closely. And so it was a 2-2 count. And then he singles just a shot back up the middle. And that was just a great moment to watch his family jump up, his mom, his dad, his sister, and all the family. And then just to be able to see that big smile on his face. And I was excited to see him debut last night. He looked really strong behind the plate, as I mentioned. His pitch framing was really, really good. And that moment where they were trying to bunt the runner over, the A's were bunting a runner over from second to third. And O'Hoppe hopped up, right? And he grabs the ball and fires down to third base. Strong throw, looked confident. Man, I love this kid after just one game.
Me too. I really enjoy the excitement he brings to the team. I loved seeing his parents in the stands. His dad was very calm, very emotional. His sister, his twin sister, he's got a twin sister.
That's right.
And of course, his mom were there as well. So that was fantastic to see. And speaking of the pitch framing, that's one thing that I was paying attention to since the game started. And there was an early strike that looked like he could have gotten away with taking the strike, but it was called a ball, and you kind of saw some glove movement. And the more Gubaza talked about it on the broadcast, you could see O'Hoppe getting better and better at framing pitches behind the plate, stealing some strikes for the pitchers out there. And so if he can keep that up, mind you, he's 22. And so he has a very long career ahead of him. And it's great to see him make an impressive debut and contribute the way that he did. And that play at third base, going for the difficult out, but taking out the lead runner at third, was so impressive, because
great move.
9 times out of 10, the catcher is going to go to first base to get the easy out. And that made all the difference in that inning. And it helped us get to that 4-1 lead and take home the victory with O'Hoppe. And speaking of catching and pitching, Michael Lorenzen did struggle a little bit. The score won't show that because it was only 4-1 and it was an unearned run.
Yeah.
But he went through a lot of pitches early on. But we have to remember that he was out for over a month with that shoulder issue. And so he's still working his way back. He's somebody that you and I felt like he could be an excellent addition to the rotation next season.
Yeah.
And I think he wants to be here, Mike. I think that Lorenzen would really love to be an Angel again in 2023.
Yeah, I would love to have him back too, because I think the guy with a full season, healthy season could really make an impact. He set career highs in innings pitched and starts and ERA and strikeouts. And so I'd love to have him back. And I think that we could get him for a pretty cost-effective salary. And you mentioned it, John. Mike Trout just keeps on hitting his 38th home run. Taylor Ward, his 22nd home run. Welcome back, Taylor.
You and I said he's going to get to 25. We wanted Trout to get to at least 40. And here we are with number 38 for Trout and number 22 for Taylor Ward. So they're inching their way up to where we said that we would like them to finish strong from a couple episodes back. We said, hey, those guys got to finish strong. And they certainly did that. Speaking of Lorenzen's line, he had 5 innings pitched, 3 hits, 3 walks, and 8 strikeouts. That was really impressive.
Yeah.
Because he's typically good at getting the ground ball, but it looked like he might not finish the 5th inning. And I was impressed that he was able to get through it, able to finish that on 102 pitches. 102 in 5 innings, of course, certainly not efficient, but again, it's that shoulder issue. So it was good to see him get through that.
And you know that he's working through some things and he's still trying to find his rhythm again. And I was impressed with him last night. And it was fun to watch him. I was thankful that he is back. What was really hard to watch last night, Johnny, was Mickey Moniak. That poor guy. The ball hits his hand, and then he could tell that it's probably broken or it's probably a bad sprain or something like that. And then when the tears started flowing, I got to be honest, mine did too, because that poor kid has tried really hard being the number 1 pick, right? There's all that pressure, and then he didn't really pan out with the Phillies. And then he comes to the Halos, and he looks incredible, and then he bunts, and the ball hits his finger, and so he fractures his finger. He's out for a bit. He's back. Yay, Mickey Moniak's back. And then the ball hits him in the hand. And you could just tell
this season.
You could just tell that he was just so heartbroken. And then he's trying to cover it up as he's walking off the field. Listen, Mickey, you cry all you want, bro, because my heart broke for you as well. And speaking of broken hands, Rendon is healed. And he is back, right? That's probably that's a terrible transition.
Wrist issue. Wrist.
Let me try it again. Hey, Rendon's back.
Hey,
and so he's going to serve his 5-game suspension. He said, quote unquote, that he's back because he wants to try to get some hits in before the offseason. But I also think that they brought him back because they want him to get this suspension out of the way. But
and they just have to carry him on the roster and activate him in order to serve that suspension. And he's taken up a roster spot with the suspension. So they'll play a man down, but it sounds like by all accounts, he's going to be back at third for the Oakland series Oakland. So he'll be able to finish up against the A's. And I think that's just going to be fantastic to see him out there again. Mr. Clutch.
Did you see the moment where he was being interviewed in the dugout and Trout was behind him? And
I loved that.
It was great. Wasn't it great?
Oh my
so Rendon is saying, yeah, I'm going to be back. And Mike stops and kind of does like the behind the scenes guy. And he goes, my teammate's back? You're coming back? Like it was just
is there news?
It was a sweet, it was a precious moment. It was such a precious moment.
Yeah, I really love the camaraderie this team has. And again, going back to Mickey Moniak, I think collectively all Angel fans' hearts were broken at that, to see that. I don't know if there's going to be something in his swing that he needs to change. I understand the bunt was kind of a freak thing.
Yeah.
But he hurt his finger with the Phillies, and then he got hit with the bunt earlier, and then this swing was just up and in, and it just got him right on that knuckle. I couldn't tell if it was the finger or the knuckle, but either way, he just knew in that moment that he had to come out. So
it was
best
bright
wishes
red.
to Mickey. Yeah, it really was. And so speaking of changes to swings, we were talking about this on yesterday's show about Joe Adele and shortening up his swing. there's a fantastic article from Jeff Fletcher of the OC Register talking about fixing his swing and shortening up. And good news, Mike, Jeremy Reed actually recognized it, and they're working on it. So what
he
was
did one
funny to
thing
me
this year.
no kidding. So this article was actually about 3 weeks old. So this has been in the works. But what I noticed about Joe Adell, obviously he came in for Moniak and got that one pitch and swung at it
Yeah,
and missed.
that's hard
And
to do.
He had no time to get ready for that at bat.
Right.
But I will say that all of those foul balls that he was swinging and hitting into the stands, those were quick swings. They weren't long.
That was a great at bat.
And so it seems like that's paying off. If he can shorten up his swing, Mike Trout style, I think that's going to be very helpful for Joe Adell. And so it's great that they have identified that and that they're working on that. Hey, Shohei Ohtani is on the mound tonight for the Halos against the A's, and we're going for the sweep. And so we're excited to see what he can do. He only needs a few more innings to qualify, and he'll likely get the last start in Oakland next Wednesday. So there'll be enough time for him to start next week. I think it's going to pretty much be Sandoval, Lorenzen, and Ohtani against the A's next week, since that's the way the schedule falls. So that's going to be great to see. Best of luck, everyone, going out to the Big A to see Ohtani's last start of the season in Anaheim. And be sure that there are some MVP chants happening, because if you're going to the game and you're out there, turn around, look at your section, and get that MVP started. Use your big chest voice and get that chant started.
Big girl voice, yep.
That's right, because Ohtani deserves all the adoration, all the love. So make sure he feels that from Halo fans tonight at the game.
Well, coming up on Locked On Angels, who is the breakout player this season for the Halos? John and I are going to talk a lot about that. But first, Locked On Angels is brought to you by Blue Chew. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable tablets. And at a fraction of the cost, you can take them anytime, day or night. And the process is really simple. You can sign up at bluechew.com. Consult with one of their licensed medical providers. And once you're approved, you'll receive a prescription within days. And the best part, it's all done online. So no doctor visits, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew tablets are made in the USA and are prepared and shipped direct to your door in a discreet package. Try Blue Chew for free when you use the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. You just pay $5 for shipping. That's BlueChew.com, promo code LOCKEDON to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information.
We want to thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day, and we have an assignment for you if you're listening or watching on YouTube. If you check out the episode description, you'll find a link to our Angels roster 2022 survey. You can grade each member of the Angels roster 1 to 5 and leave some comments for us so we can understand how you felt about their season, how you feel about the player. And if you've already taken it, by the way, you can go back and change your answers if you sign in with the same account. So if you changed your mind on somebody in these last few games and how they're finishing the season, you're more than welcome to do so. And we've already had almost 100 respondents, and we want you to get in on the responses as well. And then we'll share the results on a future episode of Locked On Angels. So get in our survey. We love to hear from you and be part of the show.
Johnny, let's play a game, all right? Let's play a game called Up or Down. Should they be up on the Major League roster, or should they stay down in the minor leagues next season? I'm going to give you a name of a player, and then we're going to talk about if they should come up or if they should stay down. All right. So let's start with our favorite guy, our culture guy, our competitive guy, Zach Neto. Let's talk about him. Should he be up on the Major League roster next season, or should he stay down to cook, to marinate a little bit? And tell me why.
I'm going to let him sizzle. I'm going to let him marinate, Mike, because he's just drafted this season. He was moved right up to Double-A after a very short time in the lower levels. And man, was he certainly a contributor to their success. He was a gamer, and we talked about him yesterday and just how impressive his story was. And so I think that for such a young guy, I think he needs more seasoning in the minors. So I'm going to let him stay down in this case. How about you?
I'm going to double down on what you said. I think he needs to cook a little bit. I mentioned how I think he'll be up in 2024 or maybe at the end of 2023 to maybe get some at-bats like Logan O'Hoppe is doing. But I do think that he needs to cook a little bit, and then would love to see him, or at least consider him, coming up in the season in 2024. How about Livan Soto, John? Should he come up or should he stay down?
Well, in 9 games, 29 plate appearances, of course, this is before last night's game. He's batting .346,
Wow.
.393 on base percentage, and a .539 slugging percentage,
good.
Mike. 2 walks, 9 strikeouts, 1 home run. Remember, he had that impressive home run. 2 walks and 4 RBIs. Get this, my favorite stat, my Fangraph stat, a 165 weighted runs created plus. That means he's 65% better than the average player in MLB. Who would have guessed we got the superior Soto in just a short amount of time in the MLB? How about that?
Cheap.
And he's cheap.
Yeah.
Mike, I think I'd like to see him start in the minors next season.
Okay.
I think that he could benefit from some cooking, but that is because my thought on that hinges on what the Angels do in the offseason. If they go out and get a strong middle infielder, a strong shortstop, obviously you have options with Rengifo and David Fletcher and Livan Soto. So I think that in that scenario, Soto will be the odd man out, but I think that he would benefit from more time in the minors. And so it doesn't mean that he couldn't come up and produce later on in the season when you really need somebody. And that's depth right there. When you have somebody go down with an injury, you know that you have Soto waiting in the wings to come on up and help out this team. And that could happen with Rendon at first, and then you have to move Rengifo over there. That could happen at second base with Fletcher, and Rengifo moves to second, and you bring up Soto to play shortstop. Whatever the case might look like, Soto is perfect depth to me. But how about you?
Bring him up. I want to see him up.
Bring him up. Bring him up.
Bring him up. Bring him up. I want to see him up, and here's why. You mentioned depth. I think that he's a great depth piece, but I love his left-handed bat, and I love that he's fast, and he's played a strong short. And I think that what we have in Soto is a cheap option. I don't think the Angels are going to go get a big shortstop like we've talked about. I think that they're going to try to help save some money because we've talked about this often, that whole ownership issue and then giving Shohei money. And so I think that we're going to see a rotation of Fletch and Rengifo and Soto in the middle of the infield. And I think Soto is great depth. I think that Rengifo should start. Fletch should be at second base, but I would have Soto in there maybe 3, maybe 4 times during the week, because I think he's really impressed in just a short time. But this guy looks confident. He looks like he's having a great time. And so I would keep him up on this team next season. Johnny, what about Logan O'Hoppe? Would you send him O Downey or would you bring him O Uppy?
He's got to be on the roster next season. I think that he starts, especially with the vacancy that's going to be open from Kurt Suzuki. He's not going to be with the team. He's retiring at the end of the season, and we're still going to have Max Stassi, and Stassi's going to be an expensive backup, Mike, because I think O'Hoppe has to be in there every day. I think he's got to start every day, other than when he needs a break from behind the dish. Then you bring in Stassi. I really think that you've paid Stassi, and he earned that money based on the season that he had in 21, but it's unfortunate the way things worked out. Now, having said that, if he can turn it around, I think that Stassi brings a lot of value with his bat and, of course, behind the plate. But I think you need his experience to pair with the excitement of Logan O'Hoppe. So for me, they're both on this team.
Yeah, I'm bringing him up to you, and I'm having him start, and I think that you're going to see a great player develop at the beginning of next season. I think we're going to be really excited about that decision. All right, John, let's do some rapid fire here. You got a thought? Go ahead.
I have a thought, and this is for our YouTube listeners. Sometimes our stream is a little funky. So, Mike, why don't you hop out and hop back in, and you can join us right here. And then I'll talk about Kai Busch. How about that?
All right, sounds good.
While you take care of the issue.
Got it.
So Kai Busch is somebody who is in Double-A. He's a Double-A pitcher, somebody that the Halo fans are very excited about. The front office is very excited about. He was drafted last season in 2021 as part of those 20 pitchers who were drafted. 19 of them were signed. And of course, Kai Busch is somebody that we're really looking forward to. A huge part of the AA roster. He was an incredible part of that roster. He's somebody that I think could contribute. How's it sound? Do we sound good?
Am I back? I'm back.
You're back. You're back, baby.
I'm back. Am I good? Am I solid?
You sound clear.
You're not going to send me down?
No, I sent you down, to the minors. So I'm just talking about Kai Busch. I just mentioned where he's been and how he contributed to AA this season. I think with Kai Busch that he would definitely contribute to the Angels next season. Maybe less as a locked-in part of the rotation, more of a Chase Silseth type, where if they need to give a look to somebody and see how they're going to contribute, or perhaps they need him to fill in at some point. I mean, we have that 6-man rotation, so they really kind of had a merry-go-round in that 6th spot for a while this season, and I know Tucker Davidson has kind of been in that role. But yeah, Kai Busch, I think, can come up later in the season, but I'm going to keep him in the minors to start. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going to keep him in the minors as well, because I think that he needs to cook a little bit, and he can play that Chase Silseth role coming up and maybe being a part of a spot start here or there. All right, now let's do some rapid fire.
Yes.
Johnny, give me a up or down Chase Silseth.
Down.
I'm going to say up. Sam Bachman.
Sam Bachman, I think starting down, coming up later.
I'm going to say down as well. Ben Joyce.
Ooh, I like his arm, but I think, well, if he's going to be out of the bullpen, I say up. Let him be in the bullpen.
Yep, I say up as well. How about Michael Stefanik?
Stefanik, another depth piece. I think he goes to AAA and stays hot there. And when we need a good bat, somebody to fill in, I could see him filling in that role. Maybe even a bench piece. But I think to start the season, he's in AAA for me.
Yeah, because I'm gonna keep Soto up, so I'm gonna put Stefanik down. Is there anybody that we're missing?
Anybody that we're missing? I mean, if you think about some of the other starting pitchers in AA, I think they kind of fall into the same idea that we have with Kai Busch or maybe Chase Silseth, in that maybe they come up and help out the rotation. But you said Silseth up, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay, so you want him in this rotation now?
I want him in the rotation.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, there are several pitchers who definitely could contribute to the rotation next season. So we'll see how things play out in spring training and in the offseason for our Halos. See if they get that big arm that they need to support Shohei Ohtani, Detmer, Sandoval, Suarez, Lorenzen. Oh, there you go. I just kind of called it with Lorenzen. So we'll see if he comes back as well.
You said it. You said it. All right, Johnny, let's talk about the breakout player of 2022.
Yes.
We put a few names on this list. So let me read these names, and then you can tell us your breakout player, and then I'll share mine. Taylor Ward, Louis Rengifo, Patrick Sandoval, Reed Detmers, and Jimmy Herget. And I was so excited I put Reed Detmers on the list again. So there's 5 players there, and each of them have had a pretty good year. So who is your breakout player this season, Johnny?
For me, I'm going to say that Patrick Sandoval broke out last year. To me, that was his emergence. Yep. And so I think that we knew who he was going in. It's hard to say no to Detmers because he got the no-hitter, and he's been a great part of the rotation. Jimmy Herget showed flashes of greatness at the end of last season, and he continued that into this season. So as much as I love Jimmy, I think I got to go with Luis Rengifo, just because Luis had such a surprising year. Mike, let me give you some stats here, because he has truly impressed. So he spent 4 years with the Major League Club off and on, right? And this is the most he's played with the Major League Club, 119 games. Last year was only 54. Get this. For the first time in his career, currently batting .272. Prior to that, .201 last season, 156 in 2020, and .238 in 2019. So this is definitely his best average that he's had since coming up, and the best slugging percentage of his career, .436, an OPS of .737 with the combined slugging and OBP. Now, this is really key for me. When it comes to his splits while batting, he's got a home run rate of 3.2. Oddly enough, that matches last year's total. So the average number of home runs he's hit was a 3.2% average. And the strikeout percentage is down. He was 20% last year, 15.3 this year. And the walk percentage is actually down, but you can't really blame him because he's been such an offensive threat. So
Yeah.
even though that's come down, his on-base percentage is up, his OPS is up. So he has just improved in so many categories. And get this, this is probably pretty obvious, but he's had a 33.1 hard hit percentage. So he's hitting the ball really hard. The lowest he's had in terms of ground ball rate is 46.1 last season. Again, that's just a small sample size because he only played in 54 games, but over 119 games this season, he's matched that 46.9 ground ball rate. So he's not hitting as much on the ground, the lowest it's been in his career. And again, I go back to that hard hit rate, 33.1%. That's pretty good for Luis Rengifo for being a middle infield guy. He's shown some pop, he's shown some power, and I have to add that his WAR this season sits at 2.5. So that's the first time he's had such a high valuable WAR. But that's my breakout player, Luis Rengifo, because again, it was such a surprising season. I mean, you look at Sandy, Detmers, Herget, you can kind of expect that they were going to get better, especially Detmers. You kind of know what his potential is. So for me, Luis Rengifo was the most surprising breakout player this season. How about you?
I'm going to go with Taylor Ward because we did not expect Taylor Ward to even be in right field or to be a starter, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about this before on the pod. How it was going to be Joe Adell, and it was going to be Brandon Marsh, and it was going to be Mike Trout. And then all of a sudden, Joe Maddon said, no, we're going to go with Taylor Ward. And I'll tell you, it was a great decision in April and even in some May because he was incredible. We even had a conversation early on Locked On Angels, like, is Taylor Ward a potential MVP candidate, right? Because he was so on fire. And then obviously really struggled. And it was based upon that injury when he ran into the outfield wall, made the catch and ran into the outfield wall.
Yeah.
But the Taylor Ward we're seeing in the last month is the Taylor Ward that I think that he is. And so it'll be really fun to see what he does next season. But to have 22 home runs as of this recording and to be somebody that's starting to raise his average back up, that's just remarkable. And it's neat to see because he has struggled to really establish himself in the major leagues. And so he's my breakout player because he wasn't even expected to be somebody that was going to be on this roster, or at least somebody that we relied upon. And I didn't know this until the other day when Matty V, who brings great stats when he's calling games, Matty V shared a stat that the Halos are the only team in Major League Baseball right now with three players who have hit 20 home runs and have over 60 RBIs.
Really?
And and I was like, what? That sounds so ridiculous, right? Because you think about other teams, but they went through all the other teams and they said, no, these at the time they talked about it, there was not another team that had three players with 20 home runs and over 60 RBIs. The Halos are the only team. So I went to baseballreference.com just to look at the stats.
Yeah.
And it feels like when you look at the stats, you're going to go, oh yeah, like look how lopsided this lineup really is.
Right.
And then I went to a few really good teams, even Houston, and I went to New York, and they were right. And so Taylor Ward has been that third cog in the wheel that has really been a great benefit to Trout and Ohtani in this lineup. So he is my breakout player in 2022.
You know, I have an interesting thought. I feel like obviously it's disappointing when players have injuries. We saw Mike Trout struggle because his back was hurting him. We saw Taylor Ward struggle because he never quite really recovered from running into the wall. And obviously Jared Walsh with his injury, the outlet syndrome that he's had. And I have to say, at least there's a reason why they were struggling.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the silver lining, is that even though these guys were injured, they at least had a silver lining in the sense that they were bad because they were hurt.
Yep.
And we have seen Trout come back healthy, and he's crushing it. Number 38 on the season, his 12th of September, I believe, or at least 10
something like that.
home runs. And Taylor Ward slowly creeping up to 25 home runs on the season. And again, he told Erica Weston the other day that he's getting there. He's not quite back to where he was, but by all accounts, he's seeing the ball well. He's hitting the ball hard, and it just goes to show that when he's healthy, he is a good player. And I know people go through slumps, but I think the fact that these guys were hurt and then they started to decline is a good indication of the player that they will be if they can stay healthy, if they can stay on the field. They'll be much more consistent and be huge contributors in 2023.
Well, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen today. Now make your second listen to Locked On MLB podcast with MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan. He brings his humor and perspective on every team and shares some of the biggest stories from around the league. You can follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB, on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, before we wrap things up, I just want to say, Mike and I, on behalf of Mike and I, our hearts go out to our listeners in Florida, who I know we have listeners all over the country and all over the world. And if you're in Florida and you're dealing with the hurricane right now, just know that we're with you. We're praying for you. We're thinking about you. And you have our support. Hopefully, when you tune in to listen to Locked On Angels, it can take your mind off of the difficult things that you may be going through and just have fun for 30 minutes. And just know that Mike and I are here for you, and we wish you all the best. We want you to be well, stay safe, and take care of yourself. Hey, if you want to give us a follow on Twitter, you can do so at Locked On Angels, and you can catch us at Super Halo Bros on both Twitter and Instagram. And Mike, what do we have on deck for tomorrow's show?
We're going to talk about Jose Suarez and why he's actually
guy.
improved from last year to this year. We're going to share some of the minor adjustments that have made a major difference in the pitcher that he is. That's tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
Do like me some Suarez, and I have enjoyed his success this season. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Angels. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
And we'll be right back here for you tomorrow for more Locked On Angels.